Okay, earlier today, we did see Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado. She met in D.C., the White House hosting her for meetings with U.S. officials. This coming as Washington weighs its next moves in Venezuela. The visit comes amid high stakes debates over sanctions, oil enforcement, and what a political transition could eventually look like after recent U.S. actions in Venezuela. AP White House reporter Will Weiser is here with me. Will, today's meeting comes as the administration is trying to signal support for democratic outcomes, but they're also trying to do this without formally endorsing a single successor figure in Caracas, it seems. What was the main purpose of today's meeting?
Well, the White House said basically that this was a meeting that was really sought not by the president but by Maria Machado, and the idea was that she wanted to basically speak to him and sort of give him an update on where she stood. But he sort of went into the meeting without any real expectations of sort of what would be said. As you noted, the Trump administration has said that they will get to elections, but they have not given any kind of date or any kind of timeline. Right now, it's really more focused on basically maintaining control of the country, keeping the embargo so that oil tankers, aren't leaving the country in violation of sanctions, and really working to run the oil industry, to rebuild the oil industry, as the Trump administration says. And I do think that they are interested in having elections, but not anytime soon. And in fact, during the meeting today, it's pretty clear that there weren't any commitments given, that the president, if they talked with us at all, he didn't sort of set a timetable even in the discussions.
Yeah, we're looking at video on screen of Machado as part of a press gaggle in Washington, D.C., something I never thought I would say. How does President Trump see Machado fitting into the future in Venezuela? Is that clear to us?
Well, it's a good question. After when Maduro was ousted a couple of weeks ago, he really said that he felt like she didn't have the support and sort of the respect in the country, is the way he put it, to make sure that she would be the next leader. And he basically sort of pushed her aside a little bit and said he was willing to work with Maduro's number two, Delcy Rodriguez, which was interesting because Rodriguez is sort of part of this same Maduro regime, the same sort of inner circle of the former president. So the fact that Trump wasn't able to come out and sort of give a full throated endorsement to the opposition leader, the person that a lot of people saw as sort of the legitimate winner of the 2024 election, if it had been allowed to be held in a free and fair way, was notable. And Trump hasn't really backed down on that. Caroline Levitt spoke while the meeting was going on, and she basically said that Trump's initial assessment was based on intelligence, and that it hadn't changed, and that he really felt like the situation in the country was going along fine with Delcy Rodriguez, and that there really was no need to sort of endorse Machado and sort of rock the status quo. The other interesting thing that happened in the meeting is Machado actually won the Nobel Peace Prize, and she said that she presented it to Trump as a sort of a token to show that how excited she was about what she called his support for Venezuelan freedom and our effort to freedom. That Trump has not talked about that yet, that happened, and it doesn't seem to have changed his mind sort of in the short term. But all of this is, if we do get to elections, will be interesting because if there are free and fair elections, I think Machado would certainly be the favorite, but there's no guarantee that she'd be the winner of those. And Trump has certainly not done all he can to sort of further her case.
You kind of said the word there, that she shared the Peace Prize with Trump. The Nobel Institute said it's not possible to transfer the award. Did she give the medal to Trump, or did she present it to him? Like, do we know what actually happened?
That is an excellent question. That is a question that the White House is not answering. What she said was that she presented to him the medal, right? So that to me means that she showed it to him and she probably left it with him. But I don't know for a fact that the president kept it. And as you point out, the Institute, whose job it is to give away the medal, say, this is not, she can't give it to him. She can't share it with him. This is not a legitimate move. I will say that we talked to White House officials before the meeting, thinking that this might be a possibility. And what they said was it would really be a game time decision, that essentially Trump would make a decision in that moment whether or not he wanted to accept this. And he hadn't really sort of, read folks in one way or the other. Honestly, I don't know until we hear, I think, from the president himself or from the White House sort of confirming exactly what presented the medal meant in this case. I don't know exactly how it ended up. She was not with her medal when she talked to reporters in that sort of scrum that you showed.
Mm.
She also, after the meeting, came out and hugged supporters outside the White House. Obviously, you wouldn't have the medal sort of around your neck, right? So it could have still been on her person, but she could very well have left it at the White House as well.
We got to talk about Delcy Rodriguez. President Trump has recently made positive comments about interim Venezuelan President Delcy Rodriguez. In fact, he called her a terrific person. Will, who is Washington really prioritizing right now? Is it the interim government? Is it the opposition? Is it all of the above?
I think it's the interim government. What the Trump administration has said is essentially they're getting what they need from the interim government, right? That like Trump hadn't spoken to Delcy Rodriguez until yesterday, but he said that they had a long phone conversation and he thought it went well. What Caroline Leavitt told reporters today, the White House press secretary, was that they feel like they've gotten everything that they wanted from the interim government, right? There's been some political prisoners released. There were a number of Americans that were released this week, and they really feel like the Delcy Rodriguez's government, despite when she first sort of became interim leader after Maduro was ousted and said some, really negative things about colonialism and about the U.S. action, she's really softened her position. And she gave the sort of State of the Union, the Venezuelan equivalent of the State of the Union today, and said that she was willing to sort of work with the United States and to work with oil companies to try and rebuild the oil industry. That's all things that the Trump administration, frankly, is prioritizing more than the politics around this. They see this is basically an opportunity for American companies and other companies to go in and rebuild the infrastructure of Venezuela that has been run down for years since a lot of the oil refineries and other things were nationalized under former President Hugo Chavez, who was sort of Maduro's successor and sort of set up the whole road to socialism that the country is still sort of on. That's really interesting because Delcy Rodriguez also comes from that same path. I mean, she was close to Maduro, who was close to Chavez, who very much favored, running a nationalized system that could use socialism and nationalize the oil fields and oil production. Now she says that she's changed her mind and she's willing to work with the Trump administration. That's sort of what choice does she have at this point, right? But I think the Trump administration is certainly willing to sort of take her at her word for now. And as we say, they don't really feel a lot of urgency to get to elections, and so the rest of the politics is going to sort of be in a holding pattern and take care of themselves, at least for the time being.
A live look at the White House. The time in the nation's capital, 7:15. Finally, Will, Machado supporters have been pressing for international pressure relating to human rights and political prisoners in Venezuela. What did we hear on the political prisoner issue today? Did the White House address that?
Well, so Leavitt said that they expect there will be more prisoners released. That basically. So she then also met on Capitol Hill with senators from both parties, Democrats and Republicans. The takeaway from that meeting was Republicans are really happy. They felt like she was very, very complimentary of President Trump and sort of his policies towards Venezuela and towards Latin America more broadly. The Democrats were a little more troubled and said that they felt like she didn't get any assurances that there would be a return to democracy and elections in Venezuela anytime soon. And I think both sides are happy with political prisoners being released, of course, but there's also broader questions about human rights that are going to continue. And it doesn't sound like there was a lot of headway made on that issue, at least in this meeting.
All right. The AP's Will Weiser joining us tonight. Will, appreciate you. Thanks.
Thank you.